Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alabama Reloader here. In today's video, I want to go over the bullet powder combinations that I plan on testing in the next couple of range sessions with the Tikka T3X that I had rebarreled to 280 Ackley improved. Before I do that, I do want to touch on the last video that I just posted talking about brass prep in this cartridge. I actually kind of walked through some of that, sizing, die setup, that type of stuff. So all of these have been decapped, wet tumbled, resized, and then chamfered deburr. I believe I did briefly touch on the trimming portion, just in case you do need to trim your brass after you perform the sizing operation. I didn't spend a lot of time on it in that last video, but I actually did not have to trim any of this brass. I'm approaching the maximum overall length that Sammy recommends for the brass itself. So just show you what that measurement looks like. It's 2.525 cartridge base to mouth of the case. And I'm getting pretty close to that. I've got a handful of pieces that are sitting right at that 2.525 overall measurement, and then several others that are somewhere around 2.5, 1.8, kind of 2.520, so getting close. After I perform the next firing and then sizing of this brass, I will trim the brass, which I do have a Lee case length gauge on the way, already ordered. So hopefully that'll show up pretty soon, and then get all this stuff trimmed after the next firing and resizing. So with that being said, whenever you're diving into bullet powder combinations for your rifle, the main thing that you have to try to understand, or at least think about, or pretty much what I think about, is what is the intended purpose of the combination that I'm trying to work up, right? You have to answer that question to start with. Now, if you're one of those people, most of the time this is how I approach things, but sometimes I just like to throw combinations together just to see if it works and see what happens, right? But in general, most people like to go into the reloading process with a little bit better idea of what am I actually trying to achieve, okay? Now, whether that's you want to be a competitive shooter, or you want to go varmint hunting, or you want to work up a really precise hunting load for whitetail deer, for elk, whatever the case may be, or you just want to go do a whole lot of mag dumps with your brand new AR out at the range, and it's just a ton of fun to do that, right? You have to sort of at least put some type of parameters or guidelines on it, or expectations, okay? You need a set of expectations going in to kind of determine the path that you need to go down. And for this, bullet choice, which is the Nosler 140 grain ballistic tip, it's geared towards working up a really good load that I can go kill whitetail deer with. That's the point of this application. Now, you could just leave it at that, but also you might want to think about, okay, well, what's the shot distance look like, right? How far away do you want to engage a target and make an ethical shot on an animal if it's a hunting application? So a lot of that kind of comes into play, and you at least need to think through it before you just start diving in and throwing combinations together. So in this case, generally speaking, somewhere 300 and in is what we're looking at. Again, I've mentioned it multiple times on this channel. I've never taken a shot at a deer beyond 185 yards. Killed that deer with a 223 Remington. And then on a hog, I killed one at 275. So 275 yards on a hog down in Texas with my 30 Thompson Center. So that gives you the idea of sort of my shot distances. And the hog in Texas, that was a unique one-off situation. A lot of times where I'm hunting around the house, not going to be presented with those opportunities. So decided to go with the Nosler 140 grain ballistic tip, simply because in the initial round of load development, sort of just kind of, like I said earlier on in the video, just throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. I was using MP Midwest Powders MP 620, which is a very similar powder to Reloader 19. I used that powder and multiple bullets. You guys have seen the results, hopefully, so far. And just to see what my rifle would like, right? What that new barrel would like. And it really liked the combination of MP 620 and the Nosler 140 grain ballistic tip. That bullet and that powder shot the best out of anything that we tested. So why not circle back and try it with a whole lot of other powders? Now, I've already got some of these loaded up here, but I'm actually gonna load up all 60 pieces of brass with the 140 ballistic tip. I got plenty of them, so I'm gonna load them up and test. Now the load data I pulled from, this is the Nosler number 9 manual. You go to the 280 Ackley 140 grain load data, and well, these are the powders, right, that I chose. So you see those there with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 powders. And 5 of them are listed here in the manual. So of course we got Reloader 22, Reloader 19, N560, IMR 4350, and H4831 shortcut. So those are the powders that I'm gonna test, and I'm pulling that directly from the Nosler load data. Whenever you're going to do load workup and you pick a bullet, if there's any way you can actually have that bullet manufacturer, their reloading manual, that's really the preferred way to do things, in my opinion, right? Now you could go to something like the Hodgdon website where they have free load data, so you don't have to buy a manual, but they don't always have every single bullet listed for every manufacturer. So it's not always apples to apples, right? At that point, you're really kind of playing the guessing game, which is not the safest thing to do when it comes to reloading. So, but in this case, I actually have 5 of the powders that they have listed. I actually have IMR 4831 as well, but I don't even think I have enough to load up three shot groups with. I mean, I've barely got any of that powder left. So we're going to test those 5 using their load data directly out of their manual. And what I did, because Nosler also, one thing to mention about Nosler load data, they generally don't give you a very wide range of charge weight to test, right? You see 4 grains. That's the Nosler way, right? They'll give you about a 4 to 5 grain window to as far as your charge weight variation from min to max. Other load data sources, they give you a pretty wide range. Now that's good and bad, right? Because it kind of narrows your focus right off the bat, where you don't have this wide, massive 10 grain, just throwing a number out there, min to max difference, where you're like, man, if I start at the minimum and work my way up, you could burn through a lot of rounds pretty quickly just trying to cover the entire charge weight range. So what I did with these 5 powders is I just started at the minimum and I went up in 1 grain increments. So like say Reloader 22, I'm loading 60, 61, and 62 grains. Okay, I'm not trying to get up near max. I really don't want to work up a hot load for this particular combination. It's gonna be unnecessary because I've already found a really, really good load with MP620 at 59 grains that shot really, really well at around like 3130 on the velocity, and it just shoots lights out, right? So I already have a really good known load to start with that I can fall back on. So the rest of this stuff, there's no point in really pushing it too much just for the sake of pushing it, right? Those are 5 powders that we're gonna pull from that data. Now the other 2 powders I pulled from, this is the Hodgdon data, and luckily enough on their 280 Ackley, they actually have the 140 grain Nosler ballistic tip listed, so that's cool. And then they list a ton of powders. So you've got these, and then all of these are for the 140 grain ballistic tip according to their data. So a lot of good stuff here, like Accurate, Mag Pro, Ramshot Magnum. I've got those powders. IMR 7977, that's one we're gonna try. H1000, I don't have any more of that. I believe I've got some Accurate 4350. I've got some H4831. I have IMR 4955, so I was planning on trying that one as well, but I just decided to go with 7977 before I used that one. Those 2 powders specifically I bought a long time ago, cannot even remember what I bought them for, and there's really not much of them left between those 2 powders. I don't have a lot left in each container, so I really just want to kind of burn through that powder and get rid of it, to be honest with you. I've got some Ramshot Hunter I could use, Winchester 760, Accurate 2700, Stay Ball 6.5. This is a powder that someone has been recommending in the comments on practically every video related to 280 Ackley, so I picked that one as well for that individual. And then, yeah, I've got a lot of this other stuff as well. IMR 4451, Hybrid 100V, Ramshot Big Game, H4350, Accurate. I don't think I have any Accurate 4064. You see Winchester 760 again. It's kind of weird that it's listed twice. That is odd because they show two different max charges. It's listed twice. That's weird. Interesting. Accurate 2495, 2520. I've got some Shooter's World match rifle, which is supposedly a clone of Accurate 2520, so I could use that powder as well. I've got some Varget and IMR 4895, but I'm saving that for 30 Thompson Center. That's like a insanely good 30 TC powder. And IMR 4064. So you can see basically the way they have this broken down in their data is literally largest max charge weight to smallest. Okay, it goes in that order, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, so that's where the load data is coming from. 5 powders from the Nosler manual, 2 powders from the Hodgdon load data. I've got all of my load data written down here. This is the 140 stuff. This is some 175 Barnes. I'm not going to get to that just yet, but this is all of the load data. You can see where I scratched out the IMR 4831 and replaced it with Stay Ball 6.5. And then also, you know, I'm going to have some cards just to kind of keep track of, you know, what's what in what order, right? From left to right, how things are positioned. So I've got the Reloader 22, Reloader 19, and N560 charges already dumped and bullets already seated. So my seating die is already set up, but we will go out and let me finish throwing the rest of these powders. I'm not going to do any of this on camera because when you're messing with this many different powders and charge weights and trying to keep it all straight and then trying to talk to the camera as well, I'm going to mess something up. I'll tell you, I'll mess something up. So I don't really want to do that. Circle back. The reason I brought in my Lee manual, this is a good resource if you just want a generalized, it's not bullet specific. It's not, you know, anything of that nature. It's literally a combination of a lot of different load data sources. That's what's nice about this Lee reloading manual. It's the 2nd edition. I don't know if they're gonna put out another one anytime soon. It's a little bit dated in the information that it has. You see it was revised 2017, so it's what, 8 years old now at this point. But it does have a ton of good information and a lot of combinations. Just like I was saying, that Hodgdon doesn't always have every single bullet for every manufacturer listed in their data, but the Lee manual has a really wide selection of bullets. They pulled data from other sources and kind of collected everything into one hardback reloading manual. So it's a really good, if you're just going to pick up one loading manual, I would really recommend the Lee. Lyman does a pretty good job as well, but I like the Lee reloading manual. So if you're just going to go with one, because these manuals get expensive, Lee would be a good one to go with. So with that being said, let me get the rest of these powder charges thrown. It is a little bit of a pain kind of going through and using a powder dispenser because after I throw 9 charges, I gotta clean it out and move on to the next powder. So it is tedious and time consuming. But the main thing, if you're doing something like this, or if you're doing a test like this and you're using an electronic powder dispenser, my advice to you is if you're gonna be throwing any type of spherical or ball powder, save it for the end, okay? Do all of your extruded powders up front. Those are so much easier just to clean out of the machine. And then from there, you can use the Stay Ball 6.5. I'll load that one last since it's more of a ball powder, spherical powder. I'll load that one last, and then, because that stuff can kind of get into all the nooks and crannies. So you really got to clean it out a little bit deeper when you use those types of powders in these. So you guys sit tight. We'll head out to the shop. I'll show you guys the bullet seating setup, and then from there, we're going to be good to go. just waiting to hit the range. So you guys just hang on 2 seconds. All right, so like I said, I've already got my seating die set up. This is the Lee bullet seating die. It came in the Lee pace setter die set that I bought for $280 Ackley. No matter what seating die brand you go with, you must read the instructions to know how to set it up, okay? Because some sizing dies, they have a crimp feature built into them, and so if you just, take for instance this Lee die, you read those instructions, it says to, very similar to the full-length sizing die setup, you raise your ram to the top of the stroke, your press to the top of the stroke, you screw the die in until you basically take out all the slop on the shell holder, you lower the ram, and then you go an additional quarter turn. So essentially the exact same setup process as the full-length sizing die. And then of course you make your adjustment up here for your overall length for the bullet seating. Now, if you try that approach with other die brands, more than likely, especially a Hornady, you will fail miserably, because the Hornady dies that I have, these guys over here, they have a crimp feature built in. This Lee die does not. Okay. Now again, read the instructions to know whether or not your specific Lee die has a crimp feature built into the die. That is very, very much important to know. When you're going to seat the bullet, if you're inadvertently crimping the bullet while you're trying to seat the bullet, it can just create a bad situation, right? So just make sure you read the instructions on your particular brand of die for bullet seating. Of course, that applies to all dies in terms of setting them up properly. The sizing die, that's the one where that seems to be kind of like a generally accepted rule of thumb, where you kind of go down, you touch the shell holder, get rid of all the slop, and then that's kind of a good starting point. Or maybe even you back the die out, maybe a quarter turn, that's a good starting point to try to size the brass as minimally as possible and still have good function in the firearm, right? That's kind of, seems to be a lot of people that agree with that approach, or at least comment that way, that is a really good approach, and that's typically the approach that they follow. So, but with bullet seating dies, it's really, really important that you follow the instructions and set it up properly, just so you're not running into issues, because you've already gone through the process. This is a time-consuming process to clean the brass, to size it, chamfer, deburr. If you do any, advanced case prep work, if you anneal it, if you, deburr the flash hole, if you uniform the primer pockets, if you do all of those steps, you have a lot of time invested into this. And then to simply jack up the bullet seating process, right? You're at the finish line. This essentially is the finish line of the reloading process. You seat the bullet, and then all of a sudden you're creating an issue simply because you didn't read the instructions to set it up properly. So, but this one doesn't have a crimp in it, this Lee die. So I just set it up per their instructions, and then adjusted the bullet seater until I got my desired overall length. And then now I'm just going through and seating the bullets. Now I do these, I go back and forth, right? I dispense the charges for each particular type of powder, right? And then I come out here, I seat the bullets, I go back and I do the next powder. Now, I'll tell you why I do it that way, because I've learned that lesson the hard way. Before I can't remember how long ago it was now, but I was doing a test where I was gonna test some different powders and different charge weights, and I loaded everything up all at one time and then brought everything out here to go through the bullet seating process, and I fumbled around with a case and knocked powder out of it. I think I might have something about maybe dealing with the press or trying to grab a case, and this was sitting pretty close to the press, and I fumbled around, knocked powder, and there was powder all over the reloading tray, plus obviously all of the exposed cases. I'm like, well, now, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, that's not good. I don't need to load all of this ammo and then go shoot it, because I've just created an absolute disaster, right? So that type of stuff, that's kind of a lesson learned that I apply now, to where I load up one powder type, I seat those bullets, then I go to the next powder type, and of course I have to walk back and forth quite a bit, but it's a lot better than cleaning up powder and throwing it all away, because it's all contaminated and mixed now. So, but I've got I've got to get the rest of these bullets seated, and then I've only got, just because of the way the math works out, I really need 21, 3-shot groups. So I've got 20 3-shot groups. So the odd man out is stay ball 6.5. It's only gonna have 2 3-shot groups whenever we go to the range to do testing, but it is what it is. So there we go. We're just gonna call it done at this point. That's very simple and straightforward stuff. I mean, reloading does not have to be complicated, guys, at all. You can make it as complicated as you want to with all of the latest and greatest high-speed, low-drag gear that, every piece of it costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and every company out there that's making this stuff is selling you on why you need it, right? And how it solves a problem that you don't even know that you have. So before you go down that path, you might just want to start off at a very basic level of sort of a process and understanding that process and going through step by step. Make sure it's as simple as possible. Start there, really build a good foundation. And then from there, you can kind of build up in terms of, equipment, different things like that, whatever the case may be, right? If you really want to go down those rabbit holes just to do it, by all means, have at it. Spend all the money you want to. But I kind of circle back now with my reloading to where I really do try to keep things as simple as possible. It helps to reduce the possibility of errors that you make, variables in the reloading process, and the results as well, because you're going to have natural dispersion no matter what. So your gun's not going to go out and shoot a quarter minute every single time you go shoot it. And so it's just the nature of the hobby, right? And this process. So that's it. That's where we're going to leave it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. From here, you guys know what we do. It's time to go to the range and get some shooting in. I've got a lot of shooting to do just with this one bullet and all these different powders. So yeah, so you guys stay tuned for that. It should be a ton of fun. Hoping to have some really good results. We'll see. We'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a good one.